Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you come back for the next episode covering the points of this conversation.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_Pod.
Follow me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
Follow me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
Join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, on one of my social media platforms, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean, and here with me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we have an incredibly inspiring episode lined up. We'll be exploring the art of career reinvention, finding your passion, and overcoming myths that might be holding you back. Our guest today is Mustafa Ammar, the founder and CEO of the Passion MBA. Mustafa, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Chris. My pleasure.
Very good. Hey, Mustafa, can you share a little bit about your journey, about how these various career transitions and how you managed to reinvent yourself so many times?
Well, in reincarnation vocabulary, I lived a few career lives in the past. I started my first life as a pharmacist, and that was out of passion for chemistry. Somehow, the moment I graduated, I knew that pharmacy wasn't for me, so I had to find another dream and find another career. And I tried to dig deeper into my childhood memories and find another passion, and diplomacy was there. So I decided to be a diplomat. Very interestingly, I think my first or second job interview I was having, and the very normal question, where do you want to see yourself 5 years from now? And I said to my boss at that time, I want to be a diplomat. It was quite weird. So after 3.5 years of working as a pharmacist and studying and preparing myself to be a diplomat, I managed to. So I became a diplomat back home in Egypt, representing my country. So my life transformed completely. I went on a very interesting journey, work in Africa, in Malawi, representing my country, also in New York in the UN, and then in China. Somehow in China, after 10 years of my career, I reached to the conclusion that there is no more to do in that career, and I reached the peak, and I have to find another passion and another career. So again, a similar process, and the result ended up in being in investment banking. So I moved to investment banking. So for 4 years, I worked in a multinational bank called AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, where I was in charge of business development across the whole map from Asia all the way to Latin America. I decided to do my MBA during the same time, and that somehow opened up my mind and my brain to do too many other things. And this is how I decided again in 2020 that now, with all the values that I live my life with and for, I have a responsibility to share that with other people who are stuck in their careers. And this is how the Passion MBA started. So for the last 4 years, I've been lucky and fortunate to help hundreds of people in many different capacities, applying exactly all the practical lessons I learned in my life on them. I have my recent book, Time to Move On. And finally, a last, if I say a fifth life, if I embark on, I envision helping 1 million orphan kids to dream big about their lives. So that whether through coaching, mentoring, and also an online platform that help them to hopefully get to their where you want.
Wow. Well, admirable. Very, very helpful. And it's that's a wonderful experience for you to have, like you said, live so many of those different lives. And now you're ready to embark on a journey to help others and help others that can't help themselves and bring them along for the journey that they can be on. What an admirable experience that you're helping people for.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was never planned, of course. I remember my 5-6 years old child. I was having all those dreams, and I'm sure each one of us, when we were children, you were always having, dreamy, having a lot of power of imagination. And somehow I thought that I would be many of those possibilities. I thought I could see myself a football player, an engineer, an astronaut, several other things. Um, Unfortunately, our societies doesn't support that, and you really have to conform. So I remember my parents and relatives around me were saying, "Oh, you cannot be all of that. You really have to stick to one." So while I was trying to conform with that society, if I could say, definition of success, I was always having those dreams inside myself. And somehow, when I was struggling to pick one specialization, I decided that, okay, I don't have to choose uh, where I will be all the rest of my life. I just have to choose my current passion. And this is how it started. So my first passion was in at least when I was 16, was in chemistry. And I thought, okay, I want to study all types of chemistry. Let me do that. Let me enjoy 5 years of excelling in chemistry. And this is how it started.
Okay, now you talked about kind of reaching back in your past and then finding those passions and then moving on and then making those passions become a reality. I'm curious as to what that process looks like because, like you said, oftentimes as we're kids, we have these big dreams, these big aspirations of things we want to be, and they get squashed and they get rubbed out by basically the society that's around us because we're told we can't be all of these other cool things. We can only be the one thing. And a lot of times that adult version of myself, for example, can't remember the dreams and the passions that I had when I was a kid because they were scuffed out so long ago. So bring me on. What does that exercise look like for you?
Right. Well, it's of course it's not easy, and we all go through different experiences in life. But what I always advise, a very major foundation of what you want to do is reflection. And reflection means you really have to spend quality time on reflecting on your dreams, writing down a bit of your memories, what you like, what you dislike about things in the past. And the more you do, the more you start writing down, the more you start remembering a lot of those memories or dreams or whatever. I've tried this with a lot of people. You always, when you go back to your childhood, you always have one central scene where almost most of your life were centering around it. And it almost applies to everybody. So when you go back to that memory, that scene, try to write it down. Remember everything was happening around that. And then whatever insecurities you have been through, whatever, you couldn't speak up, you couldn't say your opinion, whatever was happening, it's very important to go around that and try to find the other opportunities, like see the scene from outside, not from your childhood, memory. And it's very central because every time I go back to that time when I remember my family, my relative were asking me the same question, I have all those dreams around me. And I remind myself that I wanted to be this and this and this. Sometimes I cannot be all of them. For example, a football player. Yes, it's too late to do that. I got an injury in my knee, and my career in football is done. Okay, fine. But there are other dreams, and one of them was diplomacy, for example. And many of those dreams, when they happen, when they come to you, they are instilled in a very subconscious way. You saw a person that you got inspired by. You saw somebody you feel, wow, this is so cool to be a doctor or to be an engineer, whatever it is. So it's very important to dive deeper into, that time, and then try also to build practically. So we can definitely talk about very practical steps.
Yeah, it reminds me of Robert Greene. Robert Greene talks about in his book Mastery that you kind of want to find that passion. I think he calls it the mastery, but in your language that you're using is passion, the passion that you had as a kid, and think about, okay, if you can find what that was, the things that you did as a kid that you found enjoyment from doing, the mastery and the passion in, and then what can you do that is similar to that, or what is that you can then pull to the future where you are now so that you can continue and make that part of what you are about today. And that seems to be right on with what you did.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And the idea of your passion choose you, you don't choose your passion is true. Uh, you, you know, you, it's very hard to, decide that I want to choose that passion, the passion has to love you. And for whatever reason, the universe wants you to pursue that passion for a life purpose or so. It's just us who try to open our minds and hearts to receive. And then based on that, we start acting. But definitely your passion chooses you.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting as you're saying that it's there's an interesting connection because you're right. Your passion chooses you, but you have the opportunity to follow that passion, to nurture it, to have passion for your passion, or you have the opportunity to go on a completely different road. And a lot of times people go that different road because they don't know how necessarily to nurture their passion and become that person that really they were kind of meant to be. And it seems like you know with your passion project, the Passion MBA, it sounds. Let's dive into that a little bit. How does the Passion MBA help professionals worldwide have and find their dream career?
Well, when I started all of that, I decided to have my own coaching methodology, and I wanted to build that based on all my practical experiences and successfully transforming my career several times. Because you can definitely have a value from an HR expert, from somebody somebody from an academia or so, but unless you go through all those experiences and all those difficulties, it's super hard to, first of all, feel empathy. Second is to put yourself and everybody in front of you shoes and try to find a way to support that person. Because career change is a very difficult task. Sometimes it's on average, it takes 3 years if you are successful, if actually you are fast enough or efficient enough. And as you said, people find passion in some areas of their lives, and they think, okay, maybe this is a hobby. Maybe I have to stick to what entails to be a successful person in my society. In some societies, being a doctor or an engineer or a banker is a successful career. So I have to stick to that. And many people choose the second and choose to, conform with the society definition of success, but somehow they didn't find passion in what they had. And then they end up living miserably. They end up stuck, not happy, trying to find different ways. So being through all of that and several times helped me to build that coaching methodology. I call it the Passion Blueprint. And I will just give an idea of how this works. The most important part of it is orientation. So the majority of people, when they want to change, they are stuck somewhere, want to change. The problem is that they don't go through a very proper orientation phase. Where they are able to decide what is really the best fit career for them, what is really their dream career. They try several options, and they might go for an opportunity or an experience, and maybe they fail, and then they end up going back to square one, and they say, "Oh, we wouldn't rather change." So what I decided is to have a proper orientation phase where people are able to dive into themselves, find answers in themselves. And let's imagine we are driving together a car, maybe from New York to San Francisco, for example. So that journey would take a few days, and we will require a few elements in that journey. We need enough gas for the car. We need a GPS tracker with us. And we need a final address, right? Without enough gas, we will stop somewhere in the middle, and we're not able to pursue our journey. Without the GPS with us, somehow we got lost, maybe dozens of times in the middle, and who knows, we will never even get to our destination, right? And there is no benefit of having a GPS without a final address or a destination that we put in. So if we apply this on our careers and our lives, enough gas means enough passion for whatever you're doing. If you don't have passion for what you are doing, it manifests its way in many different ways. For example, burnout could be a manifestation of lack of passion. Lack of productivity, for example. Being stuck, many different manifestations of the lack of passion. The second is your GPS, and your GPS is your values. Your inner GPS is those core values that shape your personality, your society values, your personal values, your family values, religious, whatever it entails. And knowing your core values is very essential, because if you don't satisfy your core values, you will get lost. The same way you don't have a GPS, or it's not functioning. And the final destination is what I call an ideal or dream lifestyle, where you want to see yourself ideally living, working, what types of work you're doing, imagining your ideal working day, imagining your ideal weekend. Do you want to work from home? Where do you want to live? All those big questions about, your ideal, optimum, situation in life, financial freedom, whatever you really are dreaming of. It's very important to know, because unless you know where are you heading, it's very hard for you to, right? You're not in the control seat of or driving seat of your life, right? So what you want to be in the orientation phase is somewhere between the top values, the top passions, and an ideal lifestyle. So you want to merge all of those together. And this is how I end up with orientation phase, whether it's very proper. You know everything about yourself. You dive deeper into all of this, and you have a bit of possibilities. Where are you heading?
Well, okay, so that's wonderful. I really like that. Now, I do have a question, because I always ask this question, because I hear people talk about values frequently.
Yeah.
What when you say values, what do you mean by values?
Values are, I give example by family, for example, freedom, justice, equality. There are certain values, and majority of us live by those certain values. I grew up on them. Whatever your belief are, and it's very important. So sorry, it got lost. It's very important that you stick to those values. So, for example, if freedom is one of my values, and that freedom ceiling is getting higher and higher all the time, which was my case. Like, I left pharmacy to diplomacy thinking of I could have a higher level of freedom when I am in diplomacy, because I keep traveling the world. I spend all my time on investing in myself, learning new languages, learning other cultures, and serving my country at the same time. So that was a high level of freedom at that time. Having done that for a quite long time, and then doing more other things, I saw right now, or a few years ago, that there is another level of freedom, and I want to satisfy that. I want to be my own boss, for example. I want to live up to my rules. I want to have financial freedom, which is complementing the whole picture of freedom. Um, uh, so if you tell me right now, would you endanger freedom and to go back for a paycheck that is, I don't know, 7 figures? I would say 100% no. So knowing your values very well, defining them, is makes your life much easier, because you cannot endanger those core, let's say 3, 5 core values to any other things. One last thing on values. Money is always not a value, because money in itself doesn't have a value. So I always advise, when you have your priority in terms of values, money is never there. Financial stability could be a value. Financial freedom could be a value. Um, uh, but money in itself, if it's a value, if it's number one for me, it will endanger everything else. It will endanger every other value, because I can steal for for that value if it's a value.
Yeah, and of course, having core values is something that is. So I think most people know that everybody should have a core value system, but what we don't know is necessarily how to find those core values, what those core values look like for us, because we're never taught that. And I think that kind of goes with maintaining like a mental health. And you talk about mental health, and it's firm in terms of career change, which is so important. And I'm wondering what strategies do you have, or have you personally used to balance your career goals with mental health and then personal growth, and all of that working in that core value system?
Exactly. And the first thing is that if you have something you're passionate about, it's so easy for you to function and enjoy what you are doing. And that's definitely have a huge impact uh, uh, on your, if I could say, moods, on the way you feel, you know. The second is to be productive, because the majority of the feeling of being stuck somewhere, it comes from not doing the right task, not doing the right thing, you know. And myself, I feel sometimes I work on a project, and for some time I'm not taking the right decisions. I'm not proceeding in the same way, and this where I feel I'm stuck. This where I feel my mood is not. You know, this where I feel my mental health, if it got for a bit longer, not really, you know. So first of all, how to know your passions very well, and then how to connect that passion to a life purpose. Because again, if you know why you're doing this, and the why is very, very important, and you know that there is a purpose for you to realize um, this career, or realize this career. So, for example, I moved to diplomacy for a reason, and I told myself I gonna have this career to serve my country, to serve my culture in the best possible way. Um, that could be okay, very high level, very high uh, uh, level of values. But at the same time, that was the motivation for me every time I'm stuck. Because every day you're trying your best, but somebody comes and say, hey, do you think that there are 2,000 people are contesting for this competition? At the end of the day, they're going to take 20 or 30. Do you think they're going to take you? You are a pharmacist, and leave all those people who are much more capable than you? And it makes sense. It make complete sense. But for me, I say I have to go all the way until the end, because this is for a purpose. I would love to this is life for that reason. I would love to represent my country or my culture in the best possible way, and I think I could. So having all these combinations together makes your life much easier, and then it affects your mental health in a much more positive way, because you're also achieving and realizing your dreams.
Yeah, and yes, yeah, very good, very good. And you know, I think knowing when it's time to move on. Well, in fact, you know, you wrote the book on that. No, time to move on. And in that book, you address some common career myths. And I'm wondering, can you share a couple of those common
Sure.
career myths with our audience that perhaps can hinder their growth or their opportunity to actually move on?
Sure. I mean, time to move on was the fruits of learning the hard way how to bust each one of those myths. And I go back again to the idea when I was talking to my family when I was a 5 years old kid, and I was saying I want to be all of these, or you know, many of them. So I grew up on that myth. For example, if I call it the supreme specialist myth, the only way to succeed in life is to specialize in one career, stick to it all your life, and never think of leaving. You know, that's the only way to succeed in life. While I don't argue that that could be a good way for many people to enjoy their life, to have a steady paycheck, the majority of people are stuck in their careers. Uh, there is a very interesting study that was done in 2019. 2.3 billion people are stuck in what they are doing, and they don't like their jobs. 85% of full-time employees around the world, they don't like their jobs. And it's scary because that happened pre-COVID. And then when COVID hit, people started resigning from their jobs, right? And then we started seeing the Great Resignation and many other economic trends where people, they don't know exactly why, but yeah, they realized when I have a bit of time at home with my family, this is what I didn't sign up, or I want to change, but I don't know what and how and why. So yeah, going back to the supreme specialist myth, through my different career transformations, I realized that there is another way to succeed in life, and I call it being a career shapeshifter. And a career shapeshifter is somebody who's able to shapeshift his identity, career identity, whenever he or she wants. And that's always based on your passion, shift, or change, because that happens all the time. I assume actually we 10 years ago we were completely different persons in our interests and our passions, and now we are completely different. 10 years from now we'll be almost other personalities. So wise people, they see and read that passion shift, change, and they go with it because it tells something. It tells that we human beings are not created like ants and bees to specialize in one task all our life. Specialization is actually created for other creatures, not for us. We are created to do many things. We get bored quickly. Another thing on that is that every single civilization in the history was mainly characterized by the big number of polymath, like the idea of being a career shapeshifter that was also back there. Somebody who was a scientist, but then he was also a doctor, and then at the same time was a poem. At the same time, he was a politician. So we have that. It's just the last 200 years that we were forced to specialize for some economic reasons. However, if anybody would feel that I'm stuck, but we are minority, we want to change, I would advise, no, you're not a minority, you're a majority, and this is actually our nature, and welcome to change.
Well, and you're right on too, because like the society pressure tells us that we need to specialize in one thing and do just that one thing. Don't branch out. What's your degree in? Okay, that's your degree. There's your job. That's what you do, and you're lined up for that the whole time. And exactly. you talk about the humans are not really designed to do one thing and specialize in it. Really, that's what machines nowadays, exactly. in my head, are designed to do, that one task. They're not going to get bored. They're not going to get tired. They're going to do that one thing over and over and over again. Humans, we can't do that. We're not actually fit to do that. And with this, as far as being adaptable and allowing your passion to grow and move as you grow and move is something that we as humans, as society, really needs to take on. Yet we're not, because in you talk about 10 years. 10 years ago, I was in one stage of my life. Now I'm in another stage of my life. In 10 more years and 5 more years, I'll be in another stage of my life. And really, because those stages happen to everybody wherever they are, their passions change, evolve, they grow, they shift, they change completely because of that time, because of the things that are happening in their life. But what doesn't change is their job, their profession. Really, most of the time, stays the same. They're not able to, they adapt and they change and they mold who they are on the outside, but they go and they clock in for that same job and hopefully they're advancing their career and they're moving up maybe in that industry or in that job, that business. But really, probably they're just staying in that one, they clock in, they do this they become that machine. And as humans, we don't want to be machines. We want to be humans with passion. And in order to do that, we need to, we need to move and pull away from that specialization into the opportunity to find your passion and understand that what you're passionate about right now will, and indefinitely, it is your passion right now, but will not be your passion in 10 years. So when that happens, how can you mold and become a shapeshifter into what that other passion wants and is pulling you to?
Exactly. Even if you really don't want to change and it's fine for you, how about AI coming and stealing your job, right? Which AI is not the future anymore. It's the present. There are huge numbers and scary numbers, actually. For example, in the coming 10 years, it's expected that 1.1 billion jobs, whether to be transformed completely or be lost. So also my question to 1.1 billion people that their jobs will disappear at some point, what would you do? If you do this only type of job and that's it, and AI will come and do it very easily for the business owner or whoever, what would you do? Again, the answer is being a career shapeshifter, somebody who is in control over his or her life and her career decisions, and see the future before it happens. Because also being a career shapeshifter means that you'll see the trends and you see what would happen in the future and act proactively 10 years earlier than the rest of other people who. I don't think they don't read it. They actually read it, but somehow, oh, what we can do, yeah, you know. So it's also a call to be in control.
Yeah, and you're right, because AI is here. It's not around the corner anymore. We're it's upon us, and trying to transverse the new terrain that we're in is challenging. And I know a lot of people who are worried about AI actively doing what they do on a daily basis, and then they have to try to reinvent themselves after being told for years you have to specialize. Like, they don't have the way of thinking outside the box, so to say, and they're stuck inside, and that box is getting squashed by a robot who's going to take their job over, which is a scary present that we're living in.
I agree, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. Another myth related to that people think if I want to change, it's too late to change. And when somebody in his, mid-level career or 40, 50 years old, the idea of like, if I want to change, it's too late. I would rather change long time ago. But that's also is a myth. And I'm proving that through the book. It's never too late to change. I'm proving through whether data, stories of people who change actually their careers when they are 60s and 70s in a very efficient way, if I could say. So there are many of those myths where they are handcuffing us in the way we think, the way we envision our life. And once you start busting some of those myths, you start seeing life from the other side. And it's like, okay, if I bust a couple of those myths, then I'm ready to move on in my life.
Yeah, and really that's all about a mindset shift, because you think, okay, I can't move on because I'm too old. I can't learn and do new things. However, if you look at that through another lens, okay, because I'm older, I'm 60, I've been around for a while. I know what I can do. I know probably a little bit better about myself now than I knew when I started this job when I was 30. And because you know more, the way you go through that process is different and has to be different, but is going to be much more efficient if you do it as an older individual than it would be as a younger individual. Because when you're younger, you have lots of thoughts and opinions that are your own, but none of them are you hold steadfast to well enough to not accept somebody else's truth as your own. But when you're older, you have all of these morals, all of these values in place. And then when it's time, you can grow and move from there, because you take all of that life experience that you have to inform your next decisions, where it's just a simple mindset shift, but absolutely you can do it at any age.
100%. And I would add to that it's really a waste of life. If I could see life from my perspective, it's a waste of life spending all your life doing the same task, the same job, the same career. Because if it's only one life, there are many potential that you would explore about yourself if you just are able to follow a bit of a few passions around and explore what you could do. And that was, for me, was a surprise. I never thought I could be an entrepreneur, for example. Like, I remember even until 2010, when somebody would tell me, wouldn't you be an entrepreneur? I say, no way. I don't have that mindset, or I don't have that, I was a civil servant, a diplomat who does things in a different way. And then when the opportunity came somehow, and I had a bit of open mindset to explore that and knock on that door, it opened up my mindset again and again and again. And seeing life from that perspective, wow, it's full of opportunities. You could explore a bit of your possible selves. If we imagine we have several universes and we have different versions of ourselves in those several universes, the idea of you go out there and you get that version of yourself and, wear it a bit and try it. Why not?
Yeah, and what a creative way to think about that too. It's the different universes. The each choice you have branches off a different universe, and there's probably a version of you that is out there doing the thing that you don't think you can do, and that's their day job, and they're thinking that the thing you do that they could never do, and that's an interesting way to think about that.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Now, you worked for a little while in investment banking with a focus on infrastructure development, and I'm wondering, could you share some insights into the importance of infrastructure development in various regions?
Sure. I was based in China, in Beijing, and the bank I work in is called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB. It's very similar in nature to the World Bank and IFC together. So the idea of you're having your shareholders as member countries, 100, I think right now 107, 8 countries around the world. And you as an investment specialist, I was in charge of business development. So my job, and luckily I joined the bank in the first year of operation. So imagine joining the World Bank in 1945 when everything started, for example. Was a very interesting period because you don't have system in place, you don't have policies in place. Everything is still, green and easy to manage. But at the same time, a lot of difficulties because the bandwidth is very small. You have a very small team, and you have to achieve big results. So I was in charge of business development across different responsibilities, sometimes in a specific region. I work all the way from East Asia, Central Asia, to the Middle East, to Latin America, Africa as well, and do what it takes to get, we call it bankable project, to get very feasible bankable project. Do whatever it takes. Focus on the macroeconomy to understand the market very well. Screen projects there. Look for those types of projects that are that the bank likes to invest in. So in general, the bank likes to invest in mega projects, somewhere between $100 million all the way to, it can go all the way to $2-3 billion worth of projects. And the ticket size is always 35% of that total cost. So you really have to have at least $50 million from my bank in that. Luckily, after 4 years, I was able to bring $1.2 billion in debt financing to different infrastructure projects, in projects worth almost $3 billion. So from solar parks to high-speed railways, ports, and several other projects. It's very difficult for somebody who's a diplomat to step in and add value in an investment department. Wasn't easy, but I had to use and leverage my skills that I have in diplomacy. One of them is communication skill, knowing and understanding how to deal with governments, and we were dealing a lot with governments. And also communication skills in the way that you're able to get to the right person and get the right opportunity to invest in. So I leverage on all of that. I also I had quite good negotiation skills as a diplomat. And also cross-cultural communication, cross-cultural negotiation is super important when you are negotiating millions of dollars of deals. And being the one who understands that culture and how things are operated in that culture, and you're the one who bringing both cultures together or in a many multicultural context, I think was a superpower. There are some projects where I was advised to close the deal, finish everything before even it started, and I had to wait and I had to be patient. And my vision proved that it was successful. So I was able to close a $220 million deal because I was able to wait, because I know how things are operated in the other culture. So it was a very interesting period because the exposure that you have, the learning curve. Again, after diplomacy, I started feeling I am on a plateau level. Again, I'm started going up again. So yeah, definitely was a great experience.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. You talk about the like a skill level or a learning level and being at a plateau, because as and kind of going back to being that career shapeshifter, when you are working as one specialized job, like we're all told we need to, inevitably we have a high, like as we're getting in, it's a high learning level, high skill level, boom, and then we get stuck, and we just plateau. We live there, and unless we move and grow and move on to something different and follow our passion, we just stay at that one level the whole time. But if we can learn and grow and move, then we can have there's going to be plateaus, yes, but then we can move again and then move again, and we're continually moving at hopefully an upward trend because of that shape shift that happens because you're following your passion.
Exactly, about 100%, because there is a time frame where if you are always in that plateau, I think you have to question a lot of things and figure out why it's happening. And in my experience, 6 months in a plateau, you really have to start thinking why this is happening. Is it because I'm still passionate about my job, but I don't like something inside? Maybe there is something with my boss or my team or the culture, the organizational culture or so. And maybe it's okay, maybe I'm shifting my passion a bit. Maybe I would work on a different types of projects, or maybe I would completely change my career or find another passion. So I think 6 months is a starting point to start thinking and reflecting. Okay, if really this will continue beyond that, I have to know why, and I have to decide how to deal with that.
Yeah, and what wonderful insight! 6 months, putting a time span on that. That way you can kind of be aware of where you're at, and then figure out what your next moves are as you go. Now, Mustafa, can you tell us about your current venture in building an online platform for career reinvention, and what is your vision behind it? What does it look like for professionals looking to make that change?
Well, the idea of the coaching business was going quite well, but again, you're helping dozens to hundreds. The idea of scaling that service, seeing the big number of people who are suffering out there. Again, back to the numbers, the Great Resignation, for example, you have on average in the last 3-4 years, 45 to 50 million Americans only are resigning from the jobs. And then they're getting other jobs, and then they don't choose those jobs carefully, so they resign again, and then mismatch happen all the time. So what I thought of, if there is another way to serve as many people as you could, I think it would be having an online platform. And I started working on that. However, while I was doing that, I found that there is another need in the market. And somehow I have a bit of passion for that charity, orphans. I really wanted that whole design of a platform, I wanted to start by serving that level first, that stage first. Teenagers, orphans, between 12 to 18 years old, they really are in a situation where they don't have somebody around them to help them to dream and dream big. The society doesn't expect much from them. There are a lot of other issues related to that, lack of access to education. Even if you have an access as an orphan to education, the challenges are immense. So what you expect from an 18 years old orphan is to just get the closest job and the lowest pay, and that's it, and conform. What I want to do is I want to, first of all, help those kids to go back to their childhood dreams, as we were talking earlier. And because they were teenagers, so it's not that late, they can easily go back and instill and get those dreams. And in a phase, I call it the dream incubator phase, where you have them dreaming and dreaming and dreaming. And then whatever the dreams are, I want to go an extra mile with them and help them to achieve those dreams through the same platform. So whether you want to be an entrepreneur, I want to help you to decide which types of business you want to build. Whether you want to start a startup, so I can support that through investments, through a startup incubator, or on the other side, whether it's an acquiring business or whatever. If you want to be a musician or a football player. So somehow, even if there is a shift, but I still see it's applying to both. What you can apply here can still apply on the mid-level career. But somehow the urgency encourage me to tweak that a bit and focus on those kids, because I see the pain more in that, and I see the power and the value in also helping those kids.
Well, and thank you for your initiative on that. Excuse me.
Thanks.
And Mustafa, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to leave our audience with?
Well, I think two main things everybody who are stuck in their careers should think of. The first thing is you don't have anything to lose. And the second is you don't have to prove anything to anybody. So you don't have anything to lose. Simply you try. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, it's an experience. And I always believe, I had a conversation today with some of my friends, that every experience is a good experience. Even if all the mistakes that you did, or even all the failures that you had, every experience is worth pursuing. And the second, you don't have to prove anything to anybody. And this is very important, that the validation should come first from you. If you have a dream, no one will come out and say, hey, this is a permission for you to have it. You give yourself the permission, go and pursue it. And again, whether you do it or not, you're doing it for yourself and for an impact. It's not for people to say whether you did it or not.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, where can our listeners go to find out more about you?
Thanks, Chris. So my two main websites, thepassionmba.com and mustafaammar.com as it's written. Both they can find me. Also, I'm very active on Instagram, The Passion MBA, and also on LinkedIn, Mustafa Ammar.
Very good. And I'll be sure to leave your links in the description for this episode as well. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode. Remember, reinventing your career and pursuing your passion is possible. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions in the future. Until next time, remember, your potential for greatness is limitless. Keep striving for excellence.